Okay. Okay, so here we go. This is the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, so that is the marvelous Metta Sutta for you. This is one of the most popular suttas in the entire Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is one of the ancient canons of the Buddhist scriptures. That's where that's from. And in part, this is what we are trying sometimes to actually do in meditation practice. But I'm not going to talk about that. I was going to talk a little bit about one of the suttas that the Buddha, where he speaks specifically about meditation practice. And it's one of those very foundational suttas that gives a very good and solid grounding to enable meditation practice. So it's a very useful little sutta, and it's quite inspiring. And it's a sort of, a thing to keep at the back of the mind when we do meditation practice. So this sutta is known as the Bodhinyana Sutta. Bodhinyana is a Pali word which means like one auspicious day, or one auspicious night. And the idea is if you want to have an auspicious night on the Buddhist path, then you have to meditate. And if you're going to meditate, you have to do it in a way that it actually works. So this then gives you the idea how to meditate so it works. So this is really exciting, right? So if you want to know how to meditate so it works, this is the answer. Yeah, and it's very obvious answer when you know it. So the sutta says something to the effect that you should not go back to the past because the past is finished, it's no longer there. You should not go to the future because the future is uncertain. Instead, you should stay in the present moment and see things as they appear. Vipassati is related to vipassana. See things clearly as they arise in the present moment. And the one who practices in this way, that is the person who has one auspicious night. Yeah, so really, really simple, really basic. Let go of the past, don't worry about the future. And of course, that is exactly what mindfulness really is about. If you're able to let go of the past and not worry about the future, well, then you're going to be mindful. Mindfulness means the ability to stay in the present moment, yeah, with a degree of clarity and all of that. So that's exactly what it is. So how do we do this? How do we let go of the past? How do we not worry about the future? This is the $1,000,000 question. Actually, $1,000,000 question is completely wrong. Yeah, it's worth much more than that. $1,000,000 is nothing compared to the things that you get in meditation practice. So it's like the cannot be counted in dollar question. That's what it actually is, I think, something like that. So forget about the dollars. This is the real path to the highest kind of happiness. So how do we let go of the past? And I'm not going to talk so much about the past because I can only talk so much. But basically, letting go of the past is about forgiveness. Yeah, it's about kind of accepting yourself and accepting people for who they are. In that way, we can let go of the past fairly successfully, and it's not that hard to do. We can all do that if we put our minds to it. But the future is in many ways perhaps more interesting because so much of the time we spend in the future thinking about the pleasures we're going to have, trying to resolve the problems of the world, trying to figure out what we're going to do next and all of these kind of things. And I'm sure many of you will have noticed that in meditation it's very easy to think about the future in this way. Yeah, the mind dwells on things, especially as soon as you start to feel a little bit peaceful and a problem arises, and then you feel more powerful already, so you feel more able to solve your problems, and therefore you go to the future to resolve them right now, when really you should wait. So how can we deal with this? How can we actually stop thinking so much about the future? And one of the ways of doing it is to realize that the future is far less interesting than you think it is. There's nothing really there of interest, yeah? So you have to get that into your mind, that this idea that we think about we're going to solve problems, but then there's another problem around the corner. So there's not all that interesting to solve that problem if there's another one just around the corner, right? There's always new stuff coming up, and we know that from our past experience that is the case. But still, somehow, the present problems seem so important. But actually, no, it is not important at all, because there's always another problem around the corner. So let the problems be here. But more importantly, I think in general, the future is always much less interesting than we think it is. We have this dream about the future, this idea what things are going to be like. And then when we get there, they are never the way we dream they should be. In the dream, everything is glossy. In the dream, everything works out perfectly. In the dream, you have a marvelous relationship with somebody. In the dream, you get this new gizmos or whatever it is that you require, or this new place to live or whatever it is. And the reality is actually far less interesting than you think it is. And I talked about this at Dhammaloka Center just a couple of weeks ago. And I said that instead of thinking about the future and thinking that you can understand the future by somehow dreaming about what is about to come for the future, the way to relate to the future is always to remember the past, because the past is a very good guide to the future. And when you look at the past, you look at how the world has worked over the last 2,000 years or 2,500 years, however far the historical record goes back, so to speak. What we see is basically the same kind of problems in humanity again and again and again. People coming, people going, around and around, the same kind of problems arising in the world. And this is very useful to remember at a time like now, when there are so many problems, with the COVID situation. We're just having this big bushfire not far from the nuns' monastery. You may have heard about that already. And all the nuns had to be evacuated because of that bushfire. So bushfires and climate change and what have you around the world. And it's useful to remember that this is just more of the same pattern that we have seen through 2,500 years. So the future is just so uncertain. It is so unreliable. We never know what is kind of around the corner. When you dream about something that you're going to do even tonight, chances are you will get it completely wrong. It will not be as interesting as you thought it would be. If it had been that interesting, you would have been satisfied long ago through the pleasures of life. But you are not. And the reason is because it is not that satisfactory. So remind yourself of these things. And when you start to remind yourself of these things, one of the little mantras that I sometimes use in my meditation is to tell myself, I have no future. Of course I have a future in one way or another, but there's nothing in that future which is interesting. And because there's nothing there which is interesting, then I don't really have a future. The present moment is far more interesting than the future, because in the present moment, if you deal with it in the right way, and especially if you're able to let go of the future, then you can find that satisfaction that you were looking for all along. And that is what the present moment promises you if you deal with it in the right way. So try to get your head around this, and right now is a very good time to do that, wherever you are in the world, because of all the problems. It just reminds you of the nature of the world. It reminds you of the impermanence of everything. It reminds you how suffering always comes back to humanity, how it kind of comes and goes, and you have no idea how long anything is really going to last. And the more deeply you appreciate that, the more you turn inward, because inward, inside of us, that is where we have some say. We can do something with our inner life. We can decide whether we want to be kind or not. We can decide how we want to think about other people. That is our decision. And if we build up a bright mind, a beautiful inner life, then that is not going to be touched by external things. And that is the power of the spiritual life. That is the power of mental development, developing the mind inside. Because the external world, which is so unreliable, cannot really touch that inner life of yours. Maybe not 100% true, because there is some interaction, of course, but it is largely true. And you become more resilient. Resilient is one of these buzzwords you hear today. And you become a more resilient person as a consequence, because you have inner qualities that can help you to carry through the difficulties of life, all the coronaviruses and what have you, and then you are on the right track. So try that idea of letting go of the future. Try to see if you can get your head around the idea that the future isn't all that interesting, and see if that can help you in your meditation practice. Again, many of these ideas in Buddhism are ideas that need to be developed gradually over time. It may not seem entirely obvious how you do it straight away, but as you develop these things over time, they start to sink in. As you hear the message again and again by people like Ajahn Bramali or whoever, then gradually it starts to sink in. And gradually there is like a change inside taking place. And you become more peaceful, you become more present, you become more aware, you become more mindful. And lo and behold, meditation starts to work. Okay, so let's try to do some meditation together and see what happens. Okay, so as we start out, one of the important things with meditation practice is to make sure that you are relaxed and at ease. So make sure that you are comfortable. There is no magic with any kind of particular posture or anything like that. So whatever posture makes you feel at ease and relaxed, that is the right posture for you. Whether that's in a chair or a floor or whatever, don't worry so much about that. And just keep on adjusting your posture a little bit. And then as you find that ease of the body, then you can move on to the ease of the mind. Remember that a lot of the time the discomfort in the body, the tensions or whatever you have, very often they are a result of the mind not being relaxed. So if you are able to relax the body, take a few deep breaths, allow everything to settle down, you're also settling the mind at the same time. And as you settle down and just relax, one of the important things about meditation practice, especially for those of you who are new to this, is to remember that there is nothing really to do. What you're doing is just trying to relax, trying to be aware, but not really actually doing anything at all. And one of the problems with meditation is often that we think we have to do meditation. But actually, meditation we don't have to do. We have to be meditation. And it's a very different thing. And one of the great ways of thinking about this is to imagine yourself coming home from work, tired, and then just sitting down and resting in your favorite armchair or whatever it is. What do you do when you rest like that? And the answer is you don't do anything at all. You don't control your mind, you don't try to watch the breath or anything. You just relax, you just be, and that is all. Meditation is a bit like that. Just be, just rest, just relax, allow things to settle down all by themselves. to be able to do this kind of meditation, it is important not to judge yourself or to judge the content of your mind in any way, but just allow yourself to go with the flow. Whatever happens is okay. Nothing is right, nothing is wrong. Being tired is okay, thinking is okay, fantasizing is fine. You just allow the things to flow. And as you allow the mind to flow, gradually you rest. Gradually the energy comes back, and then mindfulness will gradually arise all by itself. And as you just go with the flow and you allow the world to fade away, then try and see if you can feel some of the peace that arises. Try to value that peace that is there, the peaceful environment or whatever it is. Try to see the beauty of that, the value in that, how it is more delightful than the vast majority of things that happen in the world. And then as you see the delight in good things, your mind will incline in that direction. If you find yourself thinking too much, and especially about the future, then try very gently to remind yourself that there's nothing there of any real interest. To have a good future, the future is built by what you do in your meditation practice, and not by the fantasies that we have about it. And when there is no future, then the present moment becomes far easier to stay within. So gradually, you allow the mindfulness to build up. And as you sit back and enjoy the present moment in this way, there comes a point when you find that you are perhaps aware of the breath is present, and if you find that the breath is present in any way, you can just gently stay with the breath. But again, it is not a matter of force, it's just a matter of being with what is there, being with what is present, without really trying very hard at all. And then you will be on the right track. And then just allow very gently that focus on the breath just to develop by itself. Okay, everyone, so we're coming close to the end, and I would recommend you, before we come to the end, just to take the last minute just to review the meditation. And if you feel a bit more at ease, a bit more relaxed, a bit more peaceful, if some positive qualities have arisen somewhere, ask yourself why that is the case. What are the things that give rise to these qualities? What is the kind of letting go and the kind of focus that is required? Okay, everyone, so that is the meditation for today. And what do we do now, Rachel? Do we have some questions that should I just read them on the screen in the chat box? Is that right? Or how do we do this? Or are there, maybe there are no questions, but let's see what happens. Okay, so I guess we can just I can just talk, and if you have any questions,
Rachel,
yeah.
Sorry, Ajahn. Rachel, you're muted still. Rachel was talking.
Can we have a talk from you first and then questions at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So we'll just do that way. So if you have any questions, we'll put aside 10 minutes at the end for questions.
And if people would like to put questions in the chat box, or they can ask them live at the end, I'll moderate it.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my favorite sayings is okay. Because and the reason why it is such a nice saying is because this is one of the sayings of one of those very famous monks. He's actually a Thai monk, Ajahn Bramali, and when you go to his monastery, he always says okay. And it's very sweet, it's very gentle, it has this kind of very nice feeling about it, especially when it comes from somebody who has so much kindness and who is so gentle and so soft. And it always reminds me of the importance of right speech, the speaking with gentleness and speaking with softness. And we create so much happiness in the world by speaking in the right way. Such a simple thing, so incredibly easy thing to do. All we have to do is just say something which is kind of sweet, or goes to the heart, which has a kind of gentle tone to it, and straight away it becomes beautiful. And some of these great beings in the world, they remind us of that, because they have precisely that ability to be gentle in the most kind of ordinary way, but it's magic when you're there and you feel these things. So please keep that in mind. It's one of the important parts of Buddhist practice, the speaking in the right way and creating so much, so much ease in the world by doing these very simple little things. But I wasn't going to talk about that at all. Actually, maybe I should talk about it. I don't know. But it's just nice. But what I wanted to talk about is just, as I mentioned before the meditation, we just had to evacuate, all the nuns had to evacuate the nuns' monastery, Dhamma Monastery. I don't know if you heard about that. There is a big bushfire up in that area, as there is prone to be here in Australia, and a really large one. I haven't seen anything this size for many years here in the Perth region anyway. And lots of houses are burnt down. The last I heard, it was about 30 houses that had been pretty much burnt down to the ground, and people having to evacuate and all of these kind of things. And the heartache and the suffering that comes from this is quite very, very significant. Yeah, if you have your house burning down with all its contents and everything you own, it is a very, very difficult thing to deal with. And yet that is exactly what has been happening there. And the fire, last time I saw, was very, very close to the nuns' monastery. In fact, there was certain pockets of fire bordering on the nuns' monastery. Yeah, so looking kind of dangerous. So what happens when these things, when this occurs, is that you really get to feel the Buddhist idea of impermanence right there. You get it in your face. You have no choice but to feel impermanence very powerfully. And so it is kind of scary on the one hand, but it's also a marvelous opportunity to learn something more about the Buddhist teachings, because now they become real. They are no longer just nice intellectual ideas, but you can actually feel them for yourself. It's visceral. It's like, wow, this is what it means, impermanence. Yeah, the whole monastery may burn down. All the nuns have now arrived at Jhana Grove, and maybe from now on they have to stay at Jhana Grove. No more retreats because the nuns' monastery has ceased to exist. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's so uncertain, and so who knows what's going to happen next. So it is a beautiful opportunity when these things happen in our life. Yeah, ideally we learn these things before they become too close. We learn it hopefully before our own house burns down, or before our own family members die, or whatever it is. So this is that sort of opportunity. And there is one of my favorite stories how to deal with impermanence, and this is a story that many of you will have probably heard before. But it's such a nice story. And this is the story of what happened at Bodhinyana Monastery in 1991, when we had a very big fire going through Bodhinyana Monastery. This was the day that was the hottest day on record in the Perth area. For over 46 degrees at that particular time. It was the 31st of January 1991. It's seared into the memory of of Ajahn Brahm. Yeah, he always talks about the 31st of January with some kind of awe, because it was such a spectacular day in a maybe not so positive sense, but it was this amazing day. And so it was the hottest day on record, and then there was a fire coming from the south, approaching the monastery here. Yeah, and when these bushfires are on a hot day like that, they are incredibly powerful. In fact, this fire was so powerful, it was a crown fire, and the flames would leap from tree to tree. Yeah, you know what the Australian eucalyptus trees, the gum trees, are like? They are full of oils and all kinds of things, and because of all the oils in the leaves, when the heat reaches a certain point, they kind of explode. Yeah, it's like bang, they go off like a bomb. And Ajahn Brahm said it was amazing a thing to see in the distance. You could see the trees going off like bombs like that. It was a very amazing spectacle to behold. But what was not so amazing, what was really scary, was that the entire monastery was lying in the path of that fire. The fire was moving directly towards the monastery. Yeah. And it's important here to understand that this Bodhinyana monastery was basically built by Ajahn Brahm. Yeah, Ajahn Brahm is the abbot of this monastery, in case you are new to the BSWA. It was built by him. He learned the plumbing, he learned how to lay the electric cables, he learned how to lay the bricks. There is a very scary story about Ajahn Brahm. For those of you who have been to the monastery, you will know we have a big hall, yeah, and the big hall has an apex. It has at the top, the roof goes up into the apex, and it is all built of bricks. And that apex, the highest point of the bricks, is maybe 8 to 10 meters up. Yeah, it's a long, long way up to the apex of that hall. And when this building was built, and Ajahn Brahm's name is on the building license, yeah, he was actually literally the builder of that building. It's amazing, isn't it, what he has got up to. Today he can barely, he's getting really stiff and old now, but in those days he was very agile and he was doing all of this stuff. So all the brickwork was done, the roof was not on yet, but there was a few bricks missing at the very apex, at the very, very highest point. So what does Ajahn Brahm do? Well, there's no ladders, there's no kind of safety mechanism or anything like that. What there is a wall, which goes up the kind of the incline to the top, like the bricks, going like this to the top. And so he takes bricks in one hand, he takes a bucket with mortar in the other hand, and he walks up this side of all the way to the top of the apex with no safety net, with anything at all. It's absolute madness, and I think we should kind of be lucky that he's still alive in the present day, because just this wall, straight up, no safety on either side. I can imagine what that is like. That was kind of his commitment to Bodhinyana Monastery in those days. And he also says that all of the buildings at Bodhinyana Monastery, they have some of his blood on them, so he's kind of proud of that, because he has hit his thumb and he has kind of drilled his finger and done all these kind of things over the years. So that is what this monastery is like. So he had really spent enormous amounts of time and effort on this monastery. At times they would work like 10 to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was, in a way, Ajahn Brahm's life's work to build this Bodhinyana Monastery. By 1991, they had been going on for about 7 years. 7 years with full-time work in this way. That was what he had been doing. And now the fire is coming. Ajahn Brahm's life's work is on the line. All of these buildings that he has built up. And the main hall, of course, is largely built of wood, so it would have burnt down like nobody's business. And when Ajahn Brahm saw the fire, and he was told soon afterwards by the fire brigade, now we have to evacuate. When he saw that, when he saw what was going on, he knew in his heart, this monastery is going to burn down. So you can imagine what that feels like. Your life's work, you've just been spending every day almost for 7 years, working 10 hours a day, building up I would argue, one of the best monasteries probably found anywhere in the world. A place where you can have seclusion, a place where you can meditate in peace, a place where we have really marvelous facilities, where the bush is very beautiful and quiet. And now everything he has done is on the line. What would you do if that happened to you? What would you do if your fire was moving towards your house, a place you have lived for 10 or 20 years, a place that was very dear to you? What would you do? What would it feel like? And so I asked Ajahn Brahm, I asked him, well, what did it feel like when this happened? When the fire was approaching and you knew it was going to burn down, what did it feel like? And Ajahn Brahm said, at that moment, what I did, I just let go, just like that. And that is kind of astonishing, The vast majority of people, if that sort of thing happens, they would be scared, they would be terrified, they would feel like feel really awful about it, feel absolutely bad, they would get depressed and sad. But Ajahn Brahm, in that moment, he let go of the entire monastery and basically was willing to allow the whole thing to burn down. And then I realized this is almost like a superhuman power. How can you do that? How can you allow your entire life's work almost to burn down in one instant and not really touch you in an emotional way so you feel sad about it? How is that possible? And so I asked Ajahn Brahm, how is this possible? And remember, what I'm really talking about here is the idea of impermanence, the idea how to deal with things changing and not being reliable. And Ajahn Brahm's answer was, the way I was able to deal with that was to remind myself that I haven't done any of these things for the result. The purpose was not to build up a monastery here. The purpose was not to create a space for anyone at all. The purpose of what I did was merely doing it as an act of kindness and generosity for people in Western Australia, for people around the world, so that we would have a good monastery and a good place to stay and a place to practice. It was, from my perspective, as Ajahn Brahm said, it was only an act of generosity and kindness. And of course, if that is your perspective, Ajahn Brahm said, well, if that is my perspective, what it meant to me was that if the following day the whole monastery was burnt down, all I had to do was go back to the monastery again and start from scratch. Why? Because it would just be more of the same. More generosity, more kindness, and more making of good karma. So it wouldn't make any difference whether the monastery was there or not. And this is the idea, yeah? This is kind of such a profound and beautiful thing, the idea of being able to let go of things, because we never know the outcome. If we live for outcomes in our life, if we live to build things up, to produce things, to kind of create something in this world, and then hopefully it will be there. If we live for the outcome, we're always going to be disappointed, because outcomes are always going to be uncertain. Things are going to burn down. Pandemics are going to come and go. People are going to die. Yeah, things are going to change. Nothing is ever stable in this world. And if we hold on to the outcomes of this life, we are always going to be dissatisfied, always going to be disappointed, and in the end we're going to grieve, we're going to be depressed, and we're going to have all of these problems in our life. But if instead we learn from that impermanence and we understand the problem in the world, that the Dhammasara monastery, maybe tomorrow morning it won't be there anymore. Yeah? If we learn from that, then what we realize is that what we can do, and this is what we should be doing, is putting good qualities into what we do. Whatever we do in life, we put kindness into it. Whatever we do in life, we put generosity into it. We put compassion into it. We put understanding into it. All of these important things. And then we are always building something up. We're building something up inside of us. And whether the external world works out or not, it does not matter so much anymore. Why? Because we're building up the inner qualities inside instead. That is what the spiritual path is all about. It's so powerful, yeah, and in many ways it is so obvious. Yeah, it's so blooming obvious, as they say. You know, how could it possibly be otherwise? And somehow it takes a spiritual genius like the Buddha to point these things out to us, even though they are bleeding obvious. And it's clear as day, clear as mud, I was going to say, but that's not very clear. It's clear as daylight that this has to be in this particular way. And through what Ajahn Brahm did when we had that large fire back in 1991, he showed that path with absolute clarity, letting go of the entire monastery in one go and being willing to start from scratch on the following day. That is the example of that, where you let go of the external world and you focus on the inner life instead. And when we do that, something really marvelous tends to happen. Yeah. And one of the things that happens when we do this is that we start to become very content as human beings. Because so much of our life, because it is focused on external things, it is focused on building things up, it is focused on an idea, a dream about the future, where we want to be, where we want to go. It is all about desire. It is all about doing things to achieve something in the future. If that future is no longer so interesting, if we realize the unreliability of that future, then of course we start to find contentment instead. When the future is irrelevant, when the desire that comes with the future no longer makes any sense, then contentment comes in its place. It is also the same thing with anger or ill will. If the world outside is irrelevant, we don't take that ill will or anger either so seriously anymore, and we tend to withdraw from the ill will and the anger. Why? Because ill will and anger only really make sense if there is something to be done in the future, somebody we have to tell off, something that we have to do. That too starts to disappear. So two of the biggest problems that happen in meditation, ill will on the one hand, desire and dreaming about the future on the other, they both kind of dissipate like that if we can find that contentment in our hearts instead. So by remembering impermanence, yeah, and now, as I mentioned, is a very, very good time to do that, then contentment sets in. You start to feel happy with what you have now. And when you feel happy with what you have now, not thinking about other things, something amazing happens. Something astonishing starts to happen. You start to feel a different kind of happiness right here in the present moment. And you start to understand this is what I have been looking for all along, because this is a different kind of happiness. It doesn't have anything to do with the future. There's nothing about craving or desire going somewhere else. It is a fulfilling happiness that exists right here in the present moment, and that is why it is so powerful. And you start to understand what the teaching of the Buddha is about. You haven't got very deep yet. It's still fairly shallow compared to where you can go on this path, yeah? But still, it shows you some of the potential that exists on this particular path. And the Buddha gives a beautiful simile for the idea of contentment. He says, and this is in one of the Buddha's famous discourses, they're called suttas in the Pali language, and he says it is like, this is a simile used for the monastic sangha. The sangha is the monastic community. It is used for the monastics, and the Buddha says that just as a bird flies with the wings as its only burden, you fly with the wings as your only burden. In the same way, a monastic, a monk or a nun, is content with what they have, only with their robes and bowl as their only burden. They travel around the world without anything at all, having a very simple life. Your burden is your bowl and the robe, and you have no desires beyond that. And that is a beautiful idea of the monastic life. Just like a bird with your wings as your only burden. Of course, the wings are not really a burden as such, or they are a necessary burden, because without those wings, the bird wouldn't function. It wouldn't be able to fly. It wouldn't be able to do anything. But still, it is the minimum requirement. And in the same way, I would recommend you to try to think in that way. What have you got already in your life? Make that enough. Make it sufficient. Whatever house it is that you have, whatever belongings that you have, whatever relationships you are in, whatever that is, make it sufficient. This is good enough. Don't dream about anything more. Don't dream to change your relationships or create something extra. Because if you dream about those things, very likely you are dreaming something impossible that never actually will happen. That future does not exist. If you want to understand your present, you want to understand your future, look to the past instead. Look to what happens to other people. Then you will have the right idea. And it's not all that exciting at all. And once you have that idea, whatever you have in this life as your only burden, that is enough. That is sufficient. I'm happy with what I have, career-wise, status-wise, whatever it is. Then you start to find that contentment in your own practice. And then when you sit down to meditate, there's nothing to think about, because you too will not really have a future anymore. There's nothing to look forward to. Everything that you have already is good enough, and then there is no future of any interest. You pull back from that future because you know it is so uncertain and so unreliable. It makes no sense to dream about the future, which is so uncertain and unreliable, and you find the contentment in your heart instead. And this is how you fulfill that idea that the Buddha gave in the Bad Ekaratta Sutta, one auspicious night, the idea of not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, because you are content in the present moment. There's nothing more to be done. Now is the chance to just relax in what I have now. This is all that is really required in this world. And if you can enjoy that much, if you can do that, you're going to go a very long way on this path of meditation. These are some of the critical ideas, and these are some of the things spoken about the suttas. One of the things that you will notice about the idea of contentment is that it's sort of in between the practice of morality on the one hand and the meditation on the other hand. The practice of morality is very, very important in Buddhism. I mentioned very early on the idea of just okay, which is a nice thing to think of. Just the idea of kind speech, that's part of that morality. But when you are settled in your morality and you are a fairly kind person in ordinary life, then the trick for going from there to meditation, one of the most important tricks, is the idea of contentment. Because contentment not only will you then be happy about how you live as a person, but you will also reduce those things that actually get in the way of meditation practice. Yeah, you're kind of making that leap in a sense from ordinary morality, moving on to meditation, which allows your mind to calm down, because you are calming the desires, you're calming the ill will, you're reducing these things that we call the hindrances in meditation practice, and then things start to bite. Simple, yeah, it is so simple. The problem is, the reason why we can't do this is because it is still goes against our nature, it goes against our tendencies in our mind, which are to crave and to desire. We are drawn in by the world, by the people around us. It's very hard to stand your ground in a society where everyone is going in a different direction. So please come to the Armadale group, yeah? Please come to these beautiful spiritual groups that we have in the world, in many different places. That is where you get pulled back into line. It reminds you of what really matters. Sometimes I'm so astonished. I just look at myself and I feel so stupid sometimes, I feel so utterly ridiculous, because I too, even though I've been a monk for 25 years, I forget these things, yeah? And I look at the news and I think, oh, how terrible it is that things are going badly, or whatever it is. And I realize how deeply conditioned we are as human beings, how we always need to be brought back to reality. This is life, this is how it is. And when it isn't this way, we have to let it all go, and we have to focus inward instead. That is the only way to find any real happiness and any real peace in this life. Okay, so that is a little bit of a talk for you. And I hope I haven't scared the newcomers off once and for all. And maybe we will never see you again. We know that I will have to take responsibility for that. But what can you do sometimes? I hope it was acceptable. So let's have a look at there's one question there, and you are very welcome to ask more questions if you wish. This is a message from Bob. Okay, hello Bob. The latest figure is that at least 56 homes have been lost, but that number is expected to grow once they can get into the area. So there you are. That's a large fire, yeah, with 56 homes being lost like that. That is really, really a lot. But hopefully they have been able to evacuate those people. I hope one of those homes, or is it the homeless? The home of the homeless is not Dhamma Monastery. Have you heard about the home of the homeless? That is the kind of like monasteries and where we hang out. So 56 homes, yeah, have been lost. And there are no questions here, so I guess I can just carry on talking randomly. Yeah, so if it is a bit random, don't worry too much. We have another 10 minutes or so to go. If you want to ask a question at any particular point, please feel free to do so.
People can ask verbally and not just
please.
in the chat.
Please, absolutely, yeah.
Ajahn, does anyone have a verbal question? Because I know the lady from the US was wanting to ask a question. She said at the very beginning.
Yeah, sure.
What's her name? Let me find her. Where's she gone?
Sangeeta.
Can you find her, Marlene? She's gone, has she? She looks like she's dropped out. Okay, doesn't matter. She just that she wanted. I don't know what the question is.
Okay.
Sorry, Ajahn. She wanted to ask you one. Anybody else with a question? Going.
Yeah, I'd love to ask a question, Ajahn.
Yeah, please.
It's about sleepiness and working with sleepiness.
Yeah.
And I can remember hearing a long, long time ago from a monk that there's a point in the mind where the mind is very relaxed, where it can either like move left into sleep or right into sleep, and then the other one into a very still, peaceful place.
Mm.
And I was wondering if because I was battling sleep tonight and trying to work with that idea of there are different options available in that sleepy place of relaxation and going into stillness more, or just dozing off into la la land.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have any comments around working in that space where you still have some awareness, and there's sort of a sense that it could go in different directions.
Yeah, very often what you have to do is you have to build up enough energy in the mind. Yeah, often the energy is not enough, and that's why you become sleepy. So very often you just have to stay with what you're doing already and just allow things to calm down, allow things to not to use up the energy. Yeah, the lack of energy can come for many reasons. One of the reasons why there's a lack of energy is because of defilements in the mind. There's some kind of desire there, there's some kind of little bit of ill will perhaps, or whatever it is. This is one of the main reasons why there's defilement. So you can look for that and to see if there's some underlying problems. Sometimes just a little bit of metta, sending metta to everyone, just taking the words of the Metta Sutta, having metta like a mother for the whole world. It's such a beautiful idea. And then kind of, inspire yourself with that and kind of send that out to everyone. This is the sort of thing that you can do. So that is one very important one. But it may also just be, maybe you haven't got any particular defilements. Sometimes you just have to test. Sometimes you can't see the defilements. They are still there, but you can't see them because they are so deep in a sense. So you can test it by doing a bit of metta. But it may not be a defilement. And if it isn't a defilement, or it's not one of those coarse defilements, then it may just be a matter of time, allowing the energy to build up in your mind. That could be what it is about. And so all you have to do is just to relax. Sit back, keep on just being peaceful, allowing the mind to build up that energy, because that energy will come if you just give it enough time. It will come back. Your mind, if the mind is tired, it is because of doing. So by not doing, you're allowing the energy to come back. So that is so. Eventually, if you do kind of get, you start to get a little bit of joy in the mind, and you get some happiness by focusing in the right way, then the sleepiness will be dispelled like that. It will be completely gone. And that is really where you want to go. You want to move towards the joy. You want to move towards something which gives you that piti and sukha and happiness in meditation. And at that point, it will all disappear. So these things don't always work. You're not going to find joy every time you meditate. You're not going to have these things. So sometimes you just have to enjoy what you have. One of the really important things that Ajahn Brahm always taught me is that meditation is about enjoying what you've got. And if you have if you just have a bit of peace, enjoy that. If you can't get the joy, don't want to have something you haven't got, because the moment you want to have something you haven't got, you're going to destroy everything. It's going to get far worse. So just enjoy whatever you have. It's one of those very important tricks in meditation, and sometimes very hard to do. People always want to go further. But that is really the ideal. And then sometimes it works. It's fine. Sometimes it doesn't work. That's also fine. And then you are, I think, on the right track.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah.
And it connects to what you were saying also around contentment previously in your talk. The joy and the simplicity of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So,
Thank you, Catherine. Anybody else got a question? Don't be afraid. Anybody else? No? Any questions? All right, back to you, Ajahn Bramali. Nobody else has got a question.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who's speaking?
I'm Christina from Japan.
Hello, Christina.
I'm practicing meditation and trying to let go, but I find it hard to keep calm and in peace when I'm excited or someone is expecting something from me. So do you have any tips of how to keep calm in any situations?
Okay. how to keep calm in any situation. Again, the reason while you are excited is again about the future. Yeah, it's always about the future when you get excited about things. So remember that if someone is expecting something from you, or you have some idea about the future, you have no idea what it actually is going to be like. Yeah, very often it is disappointing. Sometimes it may not be disappointing, it may be nice. But in general, the future is very, very unreliable. And overall, if you look at your life and if you look back all of those times in the past when you were excited, was it really worthwhile being so excited about? If you look back in the past, how marvelous was it? Was it really that wonderful? Those things that you did, were they really worthy of the excitement? So once you start to, this is very much part of what in Buddhism we would call the idea of right view. Yeah, you have right view about things, you think about the world in the right way, and when you have that right view about things, about the future being unreliable or whatever, that is when you can start to let go. And that right view, thinking about the world in the right way, is something that you have to develop gradually. Yeah, remember, the future is not interesting. The future is more of the same. Look at the people around you. Look at your family members, your parents, your whatever it is. I have no idea what your situation is like, but whatever it is, yeah, and then start to understand the outcomes in your own life, where you are going based on what is happening in the world around you. And you start to realize there's nothing there to be excited about. It's not all that interesting. In fact, if there's anything that is to be excited about, it's meditation practice. Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah. The spiritual path of Buddhism is far more interesting than anything you can find in the world. And yet, the spiritual path, when you sit down and you close your eyes, you don't really feel excited. Yeah, you don't feel excited about, yay, meditation, wow, this is so exciting. You don't normally feel like that, even though that would be the thing to be excited about, because there you can actually find something really, really worthwhile. So this is the most important thing, is just to allow yourself to try to think in the right way. And this is called using wisdom, yeah, using wisdom practice to enable you to kind of move in the right direction. But so this is one thing you can do. Another thing that you can do is just to, one of the most important things is not to try very hard not to be excited. Yeah, I must not be excited. If you think like that, then often it is very counterproductive, because that trying can often make things worse. So just sit back, yeah, just watch your excitement, watch the mind doing funny things, yeah, and see what happens in your mind. And after a while, you start to see that it is a bit silly, yeah, all this excitement doesn't really make any sense. Why am I getting excited about all these things anyway? The more you can stand back from what is happening and just observe your mind, very often the more silly and stupid it seems. Why am I thinking in this way? It doesn't make any sense at all, being excited about things. Yeah, when it is my turn, when I have to look after things and do my job or whatever, then I will do it. But right now, just let me be peaceful and allow things to be here, because this is far better anyway. So get that perspective about things, yeah, get that clarity, use the wisdom. And if you cannot use the wisdom, or the wisdom doesn't work, then just sit back and allow things to calm down. Try to observe what is going on. And if you do get really excited and you cannot sit still, then get up and do some walking instead. Yeah, walk back and forth and try to think about the situation in a wise way. And as you do that, hopefully you can achieve a little bit of calm. But again, as I said to Catherine just a minute ago, remember that meditation is very much up and down. There will be days when you feel more peaceful. There will be other days when you are excited and you don't feel peaceful. Yeah, so don't expect that you will always have success in a meditation. Rather, what you should look for instead, you should see a general improvement over time. Yeah, so if you look from 1 month to the next one, or from 1 year to the next year, you should see there is a gradual improvement. Yeah, but in the meantime, you can expect those ups and downs, and that's part and parcel of what meditation practice is all about.
Thank you, Ajahn. Ajahn, there is one last question from Sybil in Germany. Do we have time to...
Of course we do.
That?
Of course, yeah.
She's asked, how do you minimize the feeling of wanting to exist?
How you minimize the feeling of wanting to... Wow, you want to be enlightened very quickly. Yeah, this is no the highway to enlightenment. No holding back. This is really going for it. Okay. I would say don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. Whether you mean existing in a particular way or you just mean existence in general. The desire to exist is very, very profound. Yeah, it is a very deep kind of desire, very deep-seated, and the overcoming that actually is not very easy. So instead of focusing on that, it is much better to focus on your meditation practice. Take the meditation as deep as possible, and then when your meditation is very profound, you get some good samadhi, you get some good results. That is the time to kind of look at the idea of existence, yeah, and trying to overcome that. If you try to overcome the desire of existence with an ordinary mind, it is not going to work really here. Yeah, it's going to be very hard, and sometimes you might get very depressed. You might end up doing all kind of silly things. So instead, look at the path. Practice it gradually. Get to the point where your meditation is very profound. And once the meditation is very profound, you will already have given up a large part of existence. Only a tiny bit of existence will remain. And that is the time to overcome these things in a more profound way. In fact, it could be argued that the entire Buddhist path is a gradual letting go of existence. Yeah? I don't know if you know what I mean, but for example, if you think less, in a sense you also exist less. A lot of thinking is a way of existing, yeah? And the more peaceful you are, the less you actually exist, because you are peaceful. You know what I mean? Yeah, you don't think so much, and your ego is kind of disappearing gradually because of lack of thinking, and you're giving up so much of your sense of identity when you become peaceful. And there's something very beautiful about that. And when you see these things gradually fading away, and you see that that is joined up with, is conjoined with happiness, with joy, with peace, with all of these beautiful feelings, you start to understand why existence is a pain in the backside. Yeah? No point in existing. Get rid of it, because actually you feel much better to let go of existence. That is one way of looking at it.